Welcome to Hassle-Free RE, the show where we share tips, tricks, and stories from the short-term rental industry and business alike. Hosted by Dave Menapace and Will Van Wickler. They'll help you navigate the exciting and ever-evolving world of short-term rentals. Whether you're a seasoned host or just starting out, they've got something just for you. In each episode, they'll bring you insider insights, expert advice, and real-life stories from hosts and industry professionals who have been through it all. They'll cover everything from maximizing your rental income and profits to creating unforgettable guest experiences and handling unexpected day-to-day challenges with ease. Are you ready to discover the secrets to running a successful short-term rental business without the hassle? Then let's get started. This is Hassle-Free RE.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Hassle-Free RE. I'm your host, Dave Menapace, joined here by Mr. Will Van Wickler, New England's #1 short-term rental real estate agent and STR home developer in Maine at this point. Will, how's it going, my friend? How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. The grass is growing, flowers are popping up. It's springtime here. It's mud season, and I'm just getting ready to kick some ass this spring. How are you?
Things are great. Things are great, my friend. I think we just signed on 6 or 7 new clients in like the last week and a half. A mixture,
Incredible.
actually, half of them in Cape Cod, half of them up at Sunday River. Getting those up launched as quickly as possible. And then I spoke about this a little bit on our last show, but we've just started taking on clients for hotel property management, really hotel co-hosting that we're really excited about. We are niching down just like we have in the short-term rental space, keeping it in New England for now. But it's really exciting. It's a fun time of growth. I always love the spring and the fall because while the winter and the summer can be busy seasons for accepting guests, I find that the shoulder seasons are like our real time of focused growth. Some might call it busy. I just call it expansion. And it's been a lot of fun. Like it's really enjoyable. So I'm loving it, man. Life is good.
Right, and that's really because what? The ski people had either a really crummy season and it's time to
Yeah,
reevaluate, and then the people at the beach are like, oh my God, I'm not happy with my management company. I need to
right.
get that manager locked in because we've got to launch now.
Exactly. And then it
Yeah.
also these pockets of time also coincide to when transactions are happening. People are buying homes and they're looking for a solution, be it, management or consulting. And it's just a fun space to be in. And, it was maybe about a week ago, well, at some point more than that, but I started dialing into, specific to management, what can I be obsessed with and everyone benefits from it? And there was really 3 things that it came down to. It was obsessing over our owners and their experience in working with us and making that the best experience possible. It was obsessing over my team and their experience in working with me and as part of this organization, knowing that the happier they are, the more motivated and goal driven they are, the happier our owners would be. And then the last piece is obsessing over the guest experience. And when you have those 3 obsessions and you constantly work to make those better and better, everybody wins. The owners win, the team wins, the guests win. And so it's been really fun living into that and sitting in that and really developing those obsessions, I would say.
And what a great time of year to be doing that, right? As we launch into
Yeah,
another busy little sprint here. Expansion.
totally.
I love it.
Yeah, yeah. And not to mention some killer houses are starting to come on the market. You and I were talking about that last night.
Yeah, great opportunities. And, I'm kind of expanding in the sales business to really start to look at some other markets. We've been doing a lot in
Love
the
it.
Acadia National Park area,
Yeah,
which is a really, really sleeper short-term rental market. And it's fun
yeah,
to be learning new parts of the state and how systems work out
totally.
there and how listings work out there. And it's a totally different world. So it's a lot of fun for me, and it feels like expansion, right? It's like this new
It's
season
amazing.
we're going into, and it's just cool to learn. It gets me excited about short-term rentals again. It's like we've been doing this
Yeah,
long enough, but it's always new and exciting.
I love it. I love it. Well, with that, I'm really excited to have our guest on today. His name is Jason Muth. Now, a little background. Jason and I actually met in September of 2022. So we're coming up on what'll be about 3 years ago as a short-term rental conference, really a retreat. He was there. My wife, Kim, and I really enjoyed hanging out with him. And that's when he had started his short-term rental business before then. He was investing, buying short-term rentals, and he's since expanded into other areas, but we just really hit it off. And then when Kim and I joined Short-Term Rental Secrets, Jason was already in there, and that really helped honestly give us a foundation of community within that, within that mastermind, so to speak. And it's just been so much fun to watch Jason, and really Jason and his partner Rory, their growth, their sort of how they've journeyed on through in this industry. And I'm so excited to unpack that today with him on the show.
Yeah, and it's cool. I met Jason probably 2 summers ago at that short-term rental meetup in Portsmouth, and it was back when he was
Yeah.
just investing. So now we've seen him, start the management company. So it's pretty cool to see the journey, and it's a familiar face in New England, which is always fun to see out in these crowds. So without
So
further
amazing.
ado, we'll bring him
Let's
on.
bring him on.
Gosh,
Hello,
you guys
hello.
make me you make it sound like I'm just kind of like hanging out at all these conferences, just creepy dude like meeting people left and right. But I guess I am. I mean, like sometimes like you got to be out there shaking hands, meeting people. You never know where it's going to lead. It's led to this podcast discussion with both.
That's
of us.
right. Look at us now.
Pretty much everyone that I would consider a great friend that I've met in the last 5 years, I've paid to be their friend. So it's okay.
I don't think you paid me, Dave. Wait a second.
Well,
I think I partly pay you at this point. You're a coach of the mastermind. I didn't sign that contract. I don't know. We got to work. We got to renegotiate something here.
I'm still waiting on
All
my
I gotta
check,
say
man. That's all I gotta say.
is people are benefiting by us being friends. We'll put it that way.
Right. I'm glad that I have a fiduciary responsibility to be your friend, Dave.
That's right.
I love it. Well, Jason, with that, why don't we kick things off all the way at the beginning of your short-term rental journey? What got you into this industry, and what did your first few investments look like?
What got me into the business was an incredibly uncomfortable couch and a terrible allergy to cats, to be perfectly honest. And I'll
Okay.
explain how that happened. So, back in 2016, we were visiting Rory's parents at their summer home, which is now their full-time home, at Baxter Lake in New Hampshire. And they were short-term renting before I was, believe it or not. They were on Airbnb with a property that they just rehabbed right next door to the one that they rehabbed prior to that, which they now live in full-time. And we were staying overnight there. It was the middle of the summer. My dog was alive at the time. The floor was laminate. Her fingernails were long. The sun was screaming in at 5 a.m, and I was sleeping on the pull-out couch because the bed had springs that went into your back. The mattress was so terrible. And then she would wake up and I'd be up, and this is before, our daughter was born. And it was very like, this is an uncomfortable situation. The reason we were staying there is because I'm allergic to cats, and they had a cat at their property next door. So I was like, Rory, if we're going to have a kid and I'm going to be coming up here for the rest of my life, I am not staying in that house, and I can't stay in your parents' house either because I can't breathe. So fast forward, we're walking down the street. We happen to see a sign for a property that was for sale. This is back when properties might sit on the market for a little bit with price reductions. It's probably before you remember, Will, that world. But this was 2016, and we called the agent, saw the house, thought there was something wrong with it. There was nothing wrong with the house. It was just sitting there for a little bit, and we bought it. And we said, hey, I think we could do something on Airbnb. I've heard of this website. We had no idea what we were doing. As many people don't have any idea what they're doing when they, launch their first short-term rental, because it's often a second home that they just want to buy. Right. I remember not telling my parents about it because they're very risk averse, and they were probably going to question where I was going to come up with the money for the $691 a month mortgage, which we still have to this day.
Wow.
And I just didn't tell them. And then eventually I told them, and they're like, "Oh, what are you doing? How are you going to afford that?" So anyway, we
Yes.
said, we'll figure out a way. We'll make it work. Right. That property has turned into us purchasing the land next door to the property. We purchased a property in Provincetown, Massachusetts shortly thereafter, when my friend and his now husband were telling me how good their property was doing down there. We had some extra money to invest, and we purchased a condo down there in 2018, which was a fantastic investment. And then we actually, let's see, what was number 3? We eventually bought the house 2 doors down from the initial one that we purchased because a tree had fallen on it. Nobody was living in it. We saw a guy on the roof working on it. Turns out he was the owner, and we did an off-market deal to buy that property. We also decided to develop the land that was between the tree house and the original house.
Treehouse.
And we built a fabulous 2,500 square foot property that sleeps 14 people, which is now the number 1 property in the market, according to Airbnb.
Very cool.
And we purchased a 5th property in Guilford, New Hampshire, when we sold our primary home in Boston, had all this money left over because we did great on it because our neighborhood was super hot. And we put it down on that property. And, 1 turned into 2, and then 3, and then 4, and then 5. And along the way, I said I was never going to co-host other people's properties because I didn't want to work for anybody else. And now we have a business with 17 co-host properties. So, it just kind of evolved. You kind of get around people like Dave and Will that are, inspiring people to, be their best lives, challenge us to, what's the next thing? How are you going to grow your business? And, it developed into where it is today. I mean, we're 31 times Superhosts right now. I don't think there's a lot of us that could say we're 31 times Superhosts. And Airbnb, if you're listening to this, it would be super cool if we can get badges on our profile that show how many times we've been a Superhost. I am one of the host community leaders in New Hampshire. So there's 3 of us in New Hampshire. So I do have a little bit of a beeline into Airbnb, but I nowhere near the influence that would get me that badge. But I do like to say that frequently.
I love that. Yeah, I think
that's the short of it.
I think we're at like 21, 22, whatever every quarter is, going back to Q2 of 2019.
I missed one quarter. I missed 1 quarter years ago because of one guest stay.
No!
And it was our fault. We just forgot to tell our cleaner about a turn. This is before everything was automated and we were really on top of things. And it was the wrong guest to show up in that situation, a very not understanding guest. So, because at the time we only had 2 properties, and 1 review had so much more weight than when you have so many properties. It actually pulled us down that 1 specific quarter. But I can't say 31 consecutive times Superhost, because
one day you will be
hosting
able
for 32. Well, no, I can't because we've been hosting for 32 quarters. So I'm never going to get that 1 quarter back. But that's okay. Who's even counting, right?
Just you.
Just me, of course. Yeah.
Let me ask a couple questions. What in those 5 did you have to get creative at all with the financing, is one question. And the second question is, were you doing this full time? Did you have a job? What's Rory do in his business? Tell us a little bit more about that.
I worked in the media business for over 25 years, about half that time in the real estate on the research side, and then half that time as a digital sales manager, digital sales director. So I spent a lot of time in the radio business, worked for Comcast for a number of years as well along the way, and then did some digital marketing jobs, here and there. But the bulk of my work, post college, 21 years of it were with 3 companies. Either research for media or sales manager. So I have backgrounds in analyzing numbers and working with people. We sold to a lot of local small and medium-sized businesses, and we had relatively large local sales teams. So I understood what it was like to work with all those types of people. And that was a really good experience to come into the world of short-term rentals. When that job ended in 2022, shortly before you and I met, Dave, I was planning to leave on my own a couple months later, but they gave me the opportunity to leave that summer. And I knew what I was going to do next, which was going to be, really scaling our short-term rental business. So when we bought that first property, it was a traditional vacation home loan, using DTI. I had a job, Rory had a job. I think that one is in my name, actually. So, I qualified for it just based on my income. The second property was the same thing. So we were able to get a second vacation home loan, because it was in a different market that was not in the same market where we purchased the first property. So, it's certainly feasible for people that could afford to have 2 vacation homes in 2 different areas to qualify for financing for 2 different vacation homes. We took out a small little HELOC on that first vacation loan, which I actually still have open today. I probably should try to get a much bigger
extension
size of that account. Yeah, because it's tiny. I have a credit card that actually has a higher limit than that at this point. We use that money to purchase the land next door, and then we pay that off. And then somewhere along the way, the town of Farmington put a few lots for sale that they'd taken in tax liens. I guess people weren't paying their taxes, so one of the lots was abutting our lot, and we were able to purchase that lot from the town, and then we merged the 2 lots together. And let me think. The third property we did using a DSCR loan. The fourth property we did with a DSCR loan, and then the one that we built on that land, I did using a construction loan that I qualified for, because I also had a job still when the construction loan, when I qualified for that. And that might be the best investment that we have. I mean, we locked that loan in at 3% interest back in 2021, 30-year fixed.
On a construction loan.
Yeah, 30-year fixed. First year was a draw period. So we only paid interest when we took draws. So we took 6 draws throughout the year to pay for all elements of the build. And then after that 1-year period, it automatically converted into the remaining 29 years of a standard 30-year amortized loan. But the rate was locked in, so it's like basically free money compared to interest rates. And you'll love this. I just got my escrow statement a couple days ago, and not only is my payment going down by $200 a month, but they cut me a check for $3,700 because they had basically overestimated how much money they needed to hold for escrow, and legally they had to give it back to me. So it was like
that.
This is the property that keeps on giving. So so everything was exactly. So 3 of them were based on just having a W-2 job and qualifying for those loans based on my income, and then 2 of them were DSCR loans. Which have you talked about that on this podcast before, or are you familiar with?
We
DSCR?
have. It was a couple of years ago, but why don't you get people up to speed on it, on what it is, for sure.
So, all right. So I'm probably going to screw this up, so don't come at me. But DSCR stands for debt service coverage ratio loan. And I just understand that it's kind of what real estate investors do when they can't qualify anymore based on their W-2 income or lack thereof. Right. And it's based on the income potential of the property. And the company that we used to write the loan, I believe that they used the AirDNA numbers for their underwriting, which were overstated. Shocker. But they were, that's how they underwrote the loan, and they convinced us that it was a good idea to buy it. And, they're like, hey, listen, like, as long as we can get paid back, I don't care about, your plow guy and your utility bills and, everybody else that you have to pay. But like, if you're going to pay us, then we'll write you the loan. So, it qualified according to their standards, and we decided to go ahead and purchase that loan, and I purchased that property. And we did some other things with that one that I think is the real benefit of that property. We did a cost segregation study and pulled forward $200,000 worth of depreciation. And since we fell as real estate professionals, we were able to defer a lot of taxes and do some other creative things as a result of that.
Right.
But, that's amazing. Like next level conversation.
No, I love it. Yeah, we had a tax strategist on too that like went into some of this stuff, and it's fascinating when you really spend some time and understand what levers you have to pull within this industry.
Have you guys done cost segs before on any properties that you own?
Yep. And then we haven't done it on the Cape House though. The home is just quite small, and
all land.
It's all land.
It's all
The
land.
value.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I can't really
Can't depreciate
that.
land.
You know,
Right.
I could do a cost seg on the home itself, you know,
But it's probably not
it just
worth it at
doesn't
this
matter
point.
to
With
me.
40, it's 40%. You know, as we're recording this, it's 40% bonus
Yeah.
depreciation this year,
Yeah.
and you know, you could pull forward a little bit, but if it's mostly, you know, if the big cost is the land, you know,
Yeah.
it depends on the rest of your finances, but you know, it might not be what you have to do because then now you have a stepped up basis that you're going to have to pay tax on if you sell it.
And I only have 10 years left on the mortgage anyways, and about 150 grand. Like it's just,
Mm-hmm.
it's a nice
Right.
little, it's just a nice little piece. So,
Little engine that could.
oh, it's amazing. And it'll deliver us
Yeah.
an amazing summer too, because we're going to be there all summer. So,
Oh, you're going to live there all summer? Did you
most of
move?
it.
I heard that you guys moved to like the South Shore, right?
We were thinking about it, but we ended up staying in Holliston. We found a really, really
Oh,
amazing
okay.
deal. And so we bought a new home in Holliston. We kept the old home. It's almost done being renovated, and I'll sell it in about a month. And yeah, the investor was happy, and me was
Mm-hmm.
happy because the home we bought, which I'm sitting in now, appraised about 100 grand more than what we got the house for. So having that built-in
Mm-hmm.
equity is great and just gives us a lot of
Yeah.
flexibility. So yep, we ended up staying in good old Holly Rock. For any of our
All right.
listeners that lived in Holliston in the 80s and 90s, you'll know Holly Rock. So anyways, with that, let's do this. I would love to spend some time. You've had some really unique experiences and some really, really big learning moments in this industry. And I'd love to discuss a particular situation where you had essentially a leak slash flood in one of your homes. I'd love for you to share that story, that situation, and really kind of peel back the onion on what you learned, what, if anything, maybe there's nothing, what, if anything, though, you would do differently, and just kind of walk through it, because I've seen that
Mm-hmm.
happen on other homes since it happened to you. And it's going to be something that continues to happen to other folks, and it'll be a really great lesson learning experience for people.
Yeah. Okay. So it was a little bit less of a leak. It was more of a flood. And what happened was we had guests that had a power outage that occurred while they were there, which is not uncommon around that lake because there's a lot of tall trees. And when storms come through, whether it's
Yeah.
ice or water, whatever it is, you know, they're coming down on power lines. They were scheduled to check out the following day. The power went out the previous night, and we are on wells there, so the wells require power. Many people that are renting homes in Maine and New Hampshire that are coming from the city that don't realize that to have water, you need power. They didn't put it all together, and they ended up leaving the faucet open. And for some reason, they left the stopper in the sink when they had checked out. So when the power came back on, the faucet was open and the sink was stopped up, and the sink quickly filled up and then overflowed and ran for 5 hours. And we have on-demand hot water there, so it ran hot water for 5 hours. And my neighbor thought that the house was on fire, so they called the fire department. We got a call at 2:30 in the morning, about a year ago today, not quite, but close, that they thought that our house was flooded. And that is always a, you know, you don't want to wake up to that phone call. But thankfully, we work with proper insurance, and they covered everything. Not no questions asked, but it was super easy. Like on our podcast, Smart Stay Show, we've had Darren Pettyjohn, who's the CEO of Proper Insurance, and it was basically just like our ode to him. You know, I basically spent 40 minutes thanking him. And I've done a couple testimonials for them, but you know, you never know when you're going to need a really good insurance company. And these guys cost more, but they're worth every penny because they covered about $130,000 of damage, mitigation, and lost income. And it was a very easy claims process. You know, it was just nothing felt off. It felt like everything that I was paying for in an insurance company came true, right? You never want
But
to
you
have
never
to
hear
cash in your
that.
insurance policies.
You
Yeah.
never hear
Yeah, I
that.
mean, like we've had, I mean, knock wood. I hope I never have to do that again. But
Right.
you know, it very much tested my patience because we had just built this really, really beautiful home, and it was, you know, out of a catalog, and it was just we put so much time and effort into it. I mean, like, we weren't swinging a hammer. I hired everyone to do all that stuff, but we designed it, we set it all up. It took a lot of time, effort, money. And for that to happen, a complete accident also, like, there was no malice with the guests. It just stunk. But, you know, we were up and running 3 months later. Like, everyone motored. Rory, like, that night, like, we get the phone call, and last year was a really tough water year everywhere, right? I mean, there was just, where I'm recording this right now, we had water issues here at our home in Newburyport. Wow. We had water issues in Provincetown. We had water issues everywhere, right? There was so much water, like, last spring.
Right.
And this wasn't caused by that, but the storm hit and cut the power off. So it wasn't like I got groundwater or rainwater or snow water in that property. It was literally well water that just kept flooding because of the outage. So he goes up that night, like, with, like, a wet vac and, like, a squeegee, like, thinking that it was going to do something. Like, we didn't know the extent of it. And it was A for effort. But so we had to basically tear everything up on the main level, and then the finished basement. So all the flooring came up, all the cabinets. It was a lot of drying equipment. We had ServPro of the I think they're ServPro on the Seacoast. They're based in Dover, New Hampshire. The guy lived in Farmington. I called them overnight. He was there at 7 a.m. They're used to those phone calls in the middle of the night, and that's how they get that's how they get a $35,000 job by being available for those calls. But they were fantastic. Thankfully, my builder was available. I called him back, and I'm like, Rick, like, we had a flood. Like, can your crew rebuild? And, he's happy. He's getting another job, right?
Yeah,
but
at a home he's familiar with.
Yeah, and I wouldn't. And ServPro could have done the rebuild as well, but I wanted to have the original builder do it because he knew where all the bodies were buried. He literally knew where to buy everything and just rebought everything. So thank God, 3 months later, it was ready to go, because I just didn't want to miss the summer. Because the summer is very lucrative for a lot of us in New England. So if it could have happened at any time, mud season is a great time for a big flood like that to happen. March and April tend to be the slowest months. We were paid out for rentals that didn't even happen based on our rental history. And since we had such great rental history on that property, the presumption was that it was going to rent, because we know booking windows are so short in the spring. So I got paid out for rentals that didn't even happen. And that was all proper insurance based on my coverage. I had lost income up to $50,000 of coverage. Yeah. So it was, we've heard a lot about proper, in the STR Secrets Mastermind. The question comes up all the time about insurance, and people complain about, the premiums that a company like Proper wants to charge. But I'm like, it's worth every penny when you need it.
Yeah.
Like, without a doubt.
Now, here's a question. So the home, this was the new build, correct? Like a new build.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So was there any, like, project management GC work you had to do with that, or was it pretty much just working with the builder? And did your role in the renovation change at all from your role when you were buying the home?
I mean, as the builder, it was like, Rick, can you come back and put it back to what it was? And by the way, can you plumb for another washer dryer downstairs in the basement, and then build out this little wall that I didn't build originally? And then everything else, he knew where to buy all the stuff. So, like, I didn't even have to oversee anything. I trusted him. He trusted me. I was a great customer because, like, he had put in for draws on our loan. I'd have a check in his hand the next day. We work with Northeast Credit Union, or they're now called Lighthouse Credit Union in New Hampshire. They were great also. I mean, just everybody along the way has just been, everyone did what they said they were going to do. I did what I said I was going to do. I got people paid on time. Yeah. So not a blip. One learning thing is, and I probably overcompensated with this, and I'm still paying for it now. Generator Connection loves me because I purchased 5 generators from them last year, which was not cheap. But it was infrastructure. And last year I decided that was going to be the year that we invested in our properties. I didn't really feel like buying a new property last year. So, what I thought was going to be a small kitchen renovation at that original property, painting the cabinets, putting in butcher block countertops, I'm going to put $4,000 into a property, and now I'm investing in the property. I didn't realize that I was going to have to do all this stuff as well. You know, so $90,000 worth of generators later at, 5 properties, including our primary home, 6 actually, because we put a generator in the condo in Provincetown, but it's a 4-unit building. So my contribution was not the full generator, but I did project manage that. And that was, I mean, basically this time of year between now and May, I found myself running all over the place to meet contractors, whether it's a propane guy, an electrical guy, the generator guy to start it up, the generator guy to, map the whole thing out. And I just said, listen, I just cannot stomach these power outages anymore. And they happen more than I like. And I need power at the property if I'm going to be renting this out to guests who are unfamiliar with what to do during power outages. And I'm just going to get generators at all the properties. So I decided to bite the bullet, invest in that. And, I would like to think that I've increased the value of the properties by having fully installed and permitted generators, that automatically turn on if there's a power outage.
Totally.
This story is so interesting to me because it wasn't anything wrong with the house, right? It was a freak accident.
Nope.
And a lot of times when I see this kind of damage, it's something that's wrong with the house because it wasn't properly maintained. So I'm curious, because it was user error, has your perception of hosting changed at all with preparing guests that might not have been in a home with a well before? Because I think that is such an excellent point that I sometimes even forget about, is these people are used to just turning on city water.
Yeah. So so I don't think my messaging has changed. It has changed in that I mentioned that there is a generator there that will automatically kick on. They won't have to do anything if the power happens to go out. And by the way, the generator test will happen once a week. You might be there for it. It sounds like a lawnmower. All right. So, once a week for 20 minutes, it automatically goes on just to make sure it's working correctly. But without the generators, I probably would be messaging people a little bit more closely about what to do during a power outage. I think I did add into my departure instructions, make sure all faucets are off, which one wouldn't think they'd have to put that in the instructions. But, we also shouldn't assume anything with our guests because our guests are at our property for 2, 3, 5, 7 nights, and they don't know how everything ticks. I mean, basic stuff that you expect people to know, like, please shut the door when you leave. I mean, a handful of times I've had cleaners show up. They're like, "Oh, they left the door open." Like, what?
All the time.
And usually what happens is, like if there's a whole group leaving, like the last one out, the one that's responsible thought that the door was being shut, and the last one out just kind of ran out the door, didn't realize no one was behind them, and next thing you know, the door has been left open. But I don't think I made a couple messaging changes, but I think that the generators was enough of an overreaction to that, right? But that's
an amenity.
I mean, like it's an amenity. It would be nice if it was something you could check off on Airbnb. I don't think the generator is on that list unless I have it wrong, but we do list it and we take a picture of it, and we for some people maybe that might be the determining factor when they're booking a property, but I would argue that most people that are booking these homes don't think about the power. It's assumed that there'll be power and water
and internet.
Yeah.
Totally.
The other really interesting thing I heard you say is the neighbor called the fire department. And that's where Dave and I spoke a lot about relationships with neighbors, but God forbid your neighbor hates you, right? Hates your short-term rental business. Would they have called for you, right? So those relationships, I think, are really, really important in situations like this.
Yeah. And I've known them in passing for about 8 years, and I'm still surprised that they're not upset with what we're doing, because we're basically surrounding their house with other properties that we own that we short-term rent out. I'm kind of waiting for their house to hit the market so I could buy it and build the hotel, like in Monopoly.
Yeah.
You'll have the 4 properties right there. I wouldn't buy the hotel, but I would certainly buy that property if it came up, just to have control of it. And that was the reasoning why we bought the land, because I said, if someone's going to buy this land, somebody is going to buy this land. I'd rather it be me that controls it instead of somebody else. And then when the house came for sale next to it, I said, well, somebody is going to buy this. It might as well be me.
Absolutely.
And the neighbors, they live there full time. They seem super nice. They're kind of quiet. I think I've also helped. Here's how I think that I helped them out. Our properties, we kind of underwrite them to do about 50% occupancy, give or take 5-10 percentage points. So literally a third of the year, 40% of the year, there's not a soul at one of the properties. Now there might be somebody at property A, but not property B, but it's not like there's people there every single day. Right. And I think that we're pretty good hosts in explaining to people, I put messages in saying like, your vacation is our neighbor's home. Just be good neighbors. Here's the quiet hours, and other forms of messaging as well. And I'm not going to say everybody's perfect, but I think that we do our best in making our neighbors understand, making our guests understand that they are in a residential neighborhood where people might be there full time. So, I also think that maybe our neighbor was afraid that if there was a fire, it was going to jump to their house. So there could be a little bit of that going on too. But the reason they thought there was a fire was because there was steam coming off the windows, because it was all hot water that was coming out, which is why the fire department got called. But if they hadn't called, it probably would have run for another, 9 hours till my cleaner showed up the next, that morning.
Right.
So,
right. Man. We did end up having a flood at our Cape house, and thankfully it was a couple of years ago when there was a cold snap, and the
pipe burst.
The pipe for the kitchen faucet, which is against an exterior wall, froze, cracked, and then water came in. Somehow we got out of that with only $1,000 in repair. It ended up, it wasn't a huge deal, but it could have been bad.
I mean, I should say in the initial house that we bought, we had a pipe burst there with guests there. And this is a lesson that I learned. It was like maybe our second or third set of guests. We bought the house in 2016. We had New Year's up there with our friends. I noticed that a pipe froze in the upstairs bathroom. And thankfully, my sister-in-law was like, you should have hair dryers in these properties for women who are staying here, things that we don't know for, I don't use hair dryers. And thankfully I had one there, and I saw the pipe froze. It was really cold outside. And I was like, oh, what's this? I've never had a pipe freeze in my life anywhere. And I learned that if I had a hair dryer and I, blew the pipe underneath it, it could unfreeze. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. So then, of course, it says you should get it fixed by a plumber or leave it on a drip. We said we just left it on a drip until we were going to get it fixed. We had guests that were coming. We said, oh, by the way, this pipe might freeze upstairs. Just please leave it on a drip. Thought nothing of it, right? And sure enough, they didn't leave it on a drip, and the pipe froze and it burst. And it was a soffit vent that was exposed to the exterior. The pipe had no insulation around it. There was water everywhere from the second floor down to the first floor, towels everywhere. My in-laws helped out with that. We did not submit that to insurance. We went up there. We basically cut into the wall to see what the heck was going on. And sure enough, there was the studs, the back of the sink and the piping, and no insulation at all. And evidence that this had happened before, because there was another broken copper pipe back there. And I was like, it would have been nice if they told us that this had happened before, but I guess that they didn't have to disclose that to us. But what we ended up doing is just cutting into the wall and then insulating and then drywalling that, and we made a little cubby essentially. So now the back of that sink doesn't have any exposure to the exterior pipes. And we ended up taking the property offline for about 6 weeks. But we just solved that ourselves, as the weekend warrior handyman that we are. And that was a lesson. I mean, water has not been my friend in the many, many years of doing this, but you just keep going forward. You can't let it get you back. This kind of stuff happens, especially happens in cold weather climates.
Totally.
You just fix it and you go on. Yeah.
Either too much water, or occasionally with the wells, we get lack thereof, not enough water.
I haven't had a well run dry yet, so please don't jinx me.
No, I won't do that to you. Well, I know we're coming up towards the end of our time here, but I would love to just hit on real quick kind of how your Prideaway Stays and how that developed. And, if anyone is ever looking for management in areas where you manage or people want to stay where you have homes, how they can navigate that.
So Prideaway Stays was launched out of peer pressure by you and other people in STR
Sorry, not
Secrets.
sorry.
I made it very clear when I joined the mastermind a couple of years ago that I wanted nothing to do with co-hosting because I just came out of a job where I had to answer to lots of different people, and I didn't want that again. And I said, I just want my 5 properties, maybe we'll buy some more and ride off into the sunset. But a couple of years ago, we were down in P-Town for Family Week, and we met with my real estate agents down there who we purchased the condo from, considering a sale. We did a price opinion. We told them how much we were making on the property. Their jaws dropped. They're like, "You're making how much with this property?" Like, we have a condo in a beautiful neighborhood in a great building on the west end, but it's mostly a finished basement. So it's one room that's not on the basement, spiral staircase downstairs to a living room, washer dryer, bathroom, queen bedroom, king bedroom. And then upstairs is a dining kitchen area. So like, it's a great location across the street from the beach. 5-8 minute walk to the Provincetown Inn pool, 5 to 8 minute walk into town. Like, killer location. But there's no water views or anything. But everything in Provincetown is so expensive these days. You can't really buy anything that is 6 figures anymore. So we decided, like, listen, like, I don't think I can get rid of this property. And even though we were considering it and then moving the money into something else, because there's a lot of equity in that property, we said, let's do something that we said we're never going to do. And let's go all in and run a co-hosting business here. Because if anybody can talk gay and talk short-term rentals, it's going to be me. Like, I'm really good at doing those things. I'm good at talking the language of both of those. And not a lot of people really understand that. Certainly nobody in Provincetown. I mean, it's all individual owners or bed and breakfasts, or Vacasa, Evolve, Del Mar's in town. But they have a small percentage of the properties in town. There's about 1,000 short-term rentals, and those national regional companies have 100, if that. Probably not even these days, because they're all losing properties. And some of them, like Del Mar, they don't even take on 1 bedrooms or studios. Like, they just outright refuse. So we kind of came in with the niche and said, listen, like, we can do this the right way, as now 31 times Superhost with a 4.96 rating on Airbnb, with hundreds of reviews and thousands of guests and good design sensibilities and a great network of people like yourselves, and understanding technology and just doing it the way that we're all trained to do it in STR Secrets. But also, we know all the ins and outs about Provincetown. And I know that you host on the Cape as well. I don't think, do you have any properties in P-Town, or no, you don't go that far up?
Pretty much Harwich is as far out as we currently go.
I mean, it's very, very different, right? There's like straight world on the Cape, and there's gay world on the Cape. Okay. And people that go to P-Town, they go to P-Town. They don't go to Wellfleet. Maybe they go to Truro Vineyards if they want to, like, get out of town. But they're not going to Harwich. They're not going to East Ham. They're not going to Sandwich. They're not going anywhere else on the Cape. They're going to P-Town. So we just hyper serve P-Town, and we know Provincetown really well. Like, we know where T-Dance is. We know all the slang. We know the shops. We know what restaurants are open in the off season. And, Vacasa couldn't hold a candle to that. Individual owners might know that, but then they're not pricing their properties correctly. They're doing this on the side. Right. So instead we decided to say, hey, listen, let's talk to people like ourselves, busy urban professionals who have had this lifelong aspiration to buy a place in Provincetown, because it's a very aspirational thing for people in the gay world to do, to finally get that place in P-Town, to have that second home, to maybe have a place to retire to. But the numbers are just so astronomically out of whack at this point. What you're going to buy versus how much you're going to make is not a market that an investor would want to invest in on a pure cash flow basis. The numbers just do not work today. And that is not to say that people aren't going to keep buying in P-Town. It's not to say that property values aren't going to keep going up, because what's happening is people are buying in for the dream of Provincetown. And the property appreciation is still real. Like,
Massachusetts in general. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, everything we see. I mean, you see the same stuff in bigger pockets that I do,
Yeah.
and you look at the numbers. I mean, the Northeast is again hot, right? Like, and what I
Yeah.
like about the Northeast, and I love the Northeast for all the time I've owned real estate, which goes back to 2001. It is steady Eddie, right?
Yeah.
We are not. No disrespect to any of these, hot COVID markets that shot up like a rocket and then came right down like one of Elon's spaceships that blew up, right? Like this is legitimately like a steady Eddie market. Like you, first of all, on the Cape, you can't build anywhere else, right? You're on
Right.
sand and there's water, so there's just a lot of there's a lot of opportunity, I think. And what we still love Provincetown because this it's just a market that people really want to be at. If you love Provincetown,
Yeah.
you really, really want to be in Provincetown. So now what we're hearing from owners, a lot of people that are working with us are buying their first property and they don't have time to manage it, don't even know where to start, but they want to cover their costs is kind of
Yeah.
what we're hearing. They want to cover
Yep.
their costs so then they can use the property. It can appreciate. They'll have a great return on equity and they'll be hands off. They'll be hassle free, right?
Hassle
Um,
free. That's
and
right.
is that what you're seeing in Maine? Like, are you seeing people that the numbers don't work on a cash flow basis, but if you use the property, there's a lot of value in that, and if you can get your costs covered, they're happy?
There's definitely two camps, you know what I mean? And I'll let Will speak to this in just a sec. The mostly in Massachusetts, particularly Cape Cod, anyone that buys usually isn't going to consider themselves a real estate investor unless they're specifically buying a home that has certain amenities that have a pool and maybe they can do a couple things to it, but it's not the short-term rental investor hasn't been like a super hot niche for investing right now, probably because of where interest rates are and just general expenses and
Mhm.
things like that. In Maine, it's probably like I would say 40% investor, 60% second homeowner. Um, in that and it's all going to depend in Maine, it's all going to depend on what somebody wants to do with the property. That what I will say is you're getting a anyone that considers themselves an investor, they have capital, they're working with Will in certain markets to figure out exactly how big of a of a credit they can get back. I'm not seeing the investor who's just putting 10% down, adopting the furniture that was there, and then expecting a return if they're going to have a property manager.
Mhm.
That's more your second homeowner who wants good systems to keep the home safe, keep eyes on it, give it a pretty good guest experience, and offset their expenses. But Will, what are you seeing? What do you think?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. There's two different kinds of buyers. You have an investor and a second homeowner who wants to offset their cost. And I think that's why your story is so interesting to me, because I think all these people in the management world and even real estate agents, they don't do what you did first, which was identify your target customer, right? It's like the
Mhm.
simplest thing, but you just niche down. You said, this is the customer I'm going to go after. I'm not going to go after the investor because they probably don't exist, right?
Yeah, I mean, we literally said we're going to serve this one zip code 02657, and
Right.
that's where we have all of our properties. Like, we've been approached for other markets, and we've turned them down because we want to super serve Provincetown, and that's kind of where we are.
Super
I mean,
serve.
that can change. Yeah, that can change as time goes on. I mean, I have some current clients that are saying, "Oh man, like you're doing a great job with our property in Provincetown. We have this other property we're considering buying here. Would you consider doing X?" And if it makes sense, I'll consider doing it. If not, then I'd refer it out to somebody who I know, depending on where the market is. But yeah, I mean, like our aspiration for Prideaway Stays is just to get through our this summer. Last summer we had 4, kind of 5 properties that we were co-hosting, and this summer we're going into it with 17. So I
Wow.
don't think I think I don't know what I don't know, to be perfectly honest. And the end of the summer might, really like punch me in the face a couple times. And if that's the case, I'm going to go into it with a better attitude than that. However, I don't think we're going to come out of the summer fully unscathed. And we'll see what happens after the summer. But it's been a pretty good acceleration since last summer. Like people seem to keep finding us. We have a pretty decent internet presence. We're trying hard at our social media. I didn't even talk about our marketing or anything on this, but people ask about our direct mail strategy, and that's really what we focused on. The digital marketing guy didn't do digital marketing. He did direct mail because he had a good list and it worked.
And I'd say it's quite the 180 from the last time I saw you, saying you were not in management to 17 co-host deals. So it's impressive.
And I got to say, it's reached the point now where we put our reputation on the line. So it's important for us to do well, both for the people that have entrusted us with their homes and for our network and for our peers. We're members of the Provincetown Business Guild. We're members of the Provincetown Part-Time Taxpayers Association. We are sponsors of Flag Football in Boston. So we're really trying to get out there and be good community members. A portion of our proceeds go toward local charities that we care about. I'm going to forget some of them, but Family Equality, Camp Lighthouse, Summer of SAS, Swim for Life. I think I got them all then. Actually, those are the ones that we decided to donate toward last year, and we're hoping to up our donation at the end of this year to those important programs that serve Provincetown.
That's awesome.
I love it. It's really fun. Like it's what I want to say also to the listeners is put yourself in the room or in the areas where people are doing things that you want to do. It's how Jason and I met. It's how Will and I met. It can really help give you ideas for business creation and business growth. And you never know the friendships that can come out of it or what might inspire you. So I think that's really awesome. Jason, as we wrap it up, I'd love if you could share, the best way folks to get in contact with you, and also drop a plug for your podcast as well, which has been running a lot longer than this one has. Let's hear a little bit about that.
Yep, you can get me on LinkedIn or Instagram. Those are my two spots, although we're on TikTok now with the podcast and with Prideaway Stays. So prideawaystays.com, like the word pride, will get you basically everything you need to know about a business and all the properties that we co-host. You can book directly from that website. Instagram, we're trying to be really intentional with what we post on Instagram, both for Prideaway and for the podcast, which is called Smart Stay Show. So if you Google Smart Stay Show, you should be able to find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. And then we have some social media people that are teaching me how to use TikTok because I'm an old man now. So, we're on TikTok, not doing any fun dances, but, trying to grow the audience there as well. Smart Stay Show is the podcast. We are probably like 250 episodes in. It evolved from our former podcast called the Real Estate Law Podcast, which served Rory, my real estate law husband, and the world that he used to live in. But since we were having a lot of short-term rental conversations, we decided to pivot and rebrand the show. Having worked in the radio station, I've been in the radio world. I've been involved with a lot of radio stations that rebranded and flipped formats over the years. So I essentially think that we evolved our format into a new show. We work with a consultant on it. We are on hospitality.fm, which is a great network of hospitality-focused podcasts. And smartstayshow.com, all the episodes are there. If you want to be a guest, you can fill out our lead form and let us know what you want to talk about, and we'll think if it's the right fit, we'll invite you.
Love it. Awesome. Well, Jason, it was really wonderful having you on the show. It was long overdue. I think I first talked to you about 10 months ago, and then I went on vacation all summer, last summer. But thank you. Thank you so much for sharing, your stories, your time, your goals. It's always a pleasure getting to spend time with you, and looking forward to hearing everyone's thoughts on the show. If folks, if you liked it, give it a 5-star review, a thumbs up wherever you're listening or watching the show. We love 5 stars. This is 10, but we also love 5. And be sure to hit up Jason. He's been a really fantastic friend of mine in the space for a long time now. And with that, happy hosting, everybody.
See you next week.
See ya.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Hassle-Free RE. We hope you found today's tips and stories as inspiring and useful as I did. Remember, success in the short-term rental industry is all about learning, adapting, and staying one step ahead. If you enjoyed the show, please take a moment to leave us a review or comment on your favorite platform. Your feedback helps us improve and reach more listeners like you. Plus, we'd love to hear your thoughts and any topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And follow us at HassleFreeRE on social media for more tips and updates. Thanks for tuning in. And until next time, keep it hassle-free.